This life have nothing to do with it, he said. Somebody was trying to make a too literal identification. So having said that, let's move on to the stages of his quest. In the Mahabharata telling of the legend of Satyavan and Savitri, Savitri's father, King Asvapati, is said to have worshipped the goddess Savitri for 18 years, praying for 100 sons. And at the end of that time, the goddess blesses him and tells him that Brahma, the creator, has granted him the boon of a single daughter who will fulfill all his wishes. So in Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, can we find any parallel to this 18 years younger mentioned in the legend? Possibly we can interpret these years as marking steps in Asvapati's quest and in his realizations. So now I'd turn our attention to these stages. In a letter to Amal Kiran, Sri Aurobindo has said that in his poem, Asvapati's yoga falls into 3 parts or stages. First, he is achieving his own spiritual self-fulfillment as the individual. And this is described as the yoga of the king. So there are 2 cantos with this title in Book 1. Next, he makes the ascent as a typical representative of the race, to win the possibility of discovery and possession of all the planes of consciousness. And this is described in the 2nd book. This is the journey through the worlds. But this too is as yet only an individual victory. Finally, he aspires no longer for himself, but for all, for a universal realization and new creation. That is described in the Book of the Divine Mother. So the first stage, Asvapati's individual self-fulfillment, is described in the 2 cantos entitled The Yoga of the King, cantos 3 and 5 of Book 1. And the first one deals with the yoga of the soul's release. In it, Asvapati is shown as having already reached a very high level of soul development. And at this point, his further fulfillment is aided by higher powers until a seer was born, a rishi, a shining guest of time. And the rest of the canto narrates how the powers of wisdom, inspiration, intuition, discrimination, illumine and transfigure this great yogi, bringing about a first transformation of his nature, his soul's release from ignorance, his mind and body's first spiritual change. And as a result, he became able to draw the energies that transmute and age. He made great dreams, a mold for coming things, and cast his deeds like bronze to front the years. His walk through time outstripped the human stride. Lonely his days, and splendid like the sun's. So when we read these magnificent lines at the close of Canto 3, we can't help feeling that they describe Sri Aurobindo himself. And this statue that we have at the front, I feel that this would be a wonderful caption for for that statue, this image of Sri Aurobindo, lonely his days and splendid like the sun's. But Asvapati has much further to go. As a result of this first realization, he gains the secret knowledge which is revealed in Canto 4 of Book 1. And at the beginning of Canto 5, we are told this knowledge, this secret knowledge, first he had of time-born men. So this puts it very, very far back in the past. And Sri Aurobindo summarizes the essence of this secret knowledge in the first section of Canto 5. And as a result of that knowledge, we are told of Asvapati, a will, a hope immense now seized his heart. And to discern the superhuman's form, he raised his eyes to unseen spiritual heights, aspiring to bring down a greater world. This is the motivation which uplifts Asvapati throughout the rest of his quest, right up to the end of Book 3. He gathers all his energies and all his being into a single upward movement of aspiration, one pointed to the immaculate delight, questing for God as for a splendid prey. He mounted, burning like a cone of fire. He just takes off like a rocket, aiming for the higher levels. And in response to this intense aspiration comes about a tremendous transforming descent, which brings about in his nature a new and bornless change, a new transformation of his whole being, a second step. And as a result of this second transformation, Asvapati gains a new knowledge and a new power. He gains mastery over that enigmatic secret nature that both Mother and Sri Aurobindo have referred to as the mother of dreams. She is the threshold guardian of the subtle worlds. And with her surrender to him, her granting to him of all her powers, Asvapati for the first time glimpses the hierarchy of worlds. And I consider this a very, very helpful and significant passage. I like to read this to you. What he sees is ascending and descending twixt life's poles, the serried kingdoms of the graded law. It's got steps, plunged from the everlasting into time, then glad of a glory of multitudinous mind, and rich with life's adventure and delight, and packed with the beauty of matters, shapes and hues, climbed back from time into undying self, up a golden ladder carrying the soul, tying with diamond threads the spirit's extremes. It's a double series of worlds, the worlds of involution, where all the divine powers plunge to progressively more and more unconscious levels, finally founding matter. And then parallel to that, there's a series of ascending worlds which support and reflect all the possible evolutionary stages. So Aswapati is able to enter those subtle realms and start on his exploration of this hierarchy of the worlds. And he visits both the kind of worlds, the evolutionary worlds and the involutionary worlds. So Sri Aurobindo outlined his plan and intention for what has now become Book 2 in some notes that he wrote to Amal Kiran in 1937 and 1938. There he mentions there's a long passage describing Aswapati's progress through the subtle physical, vital and mental worlds towards the overmind. It is the realization of Godhead with which it will end. This long passage became the 15 cantos of Book 2. I will try to give a very brief summary of those stages, but before we start to follow these stages, I think we should ask and answer the question, where and what are these worlds? I found, as if by grace, or certainly by grace, an answer when I was looking for something quite different in Sri Aurobindo's book, The Secret of the Veda. There's an essay called The Doctrine of the Mystics. And there he asks precisely this question, where are these worlds? And he says, they are here. Man draws from the life world his vital being, from the mind world his mentality. He is ever in secret communication with them. He can consciously enter into them, be born into them if he will, even into the solar worlds of the truth he can rise, enter the portals of the superconscient, cross the threshold of the supreme. The divine doors shall swing open to his increasing soul. And he continues, the human ascension is possible because every being really holds in himself all that his outward vision perceives as if external to him. This material life and our narrowly limited consciousness of the physical world are far from being the sole experience permitted to man. If maternal earth bore him and retains him in her arms, yet is heaven also one of his parents. So we are material beings. Earth is our mother. We have to help in her fulfillment, but we can only do so because heaven is one of our parents and our soul has all the infinite capacities of the highest. So let us now attempt to follow the stages of this journey, although it will be in a very brief and summary fashion. So the first canto of Book 2, is called The World Stair. And there Aswapati has another vision of this hierarchy, as of a mountain with many, many levels. And he tells us, planted on earth, it holds in it all realms. This is the single stair to being's goal. There's one series of steps. Its steps are paces of the soul's return from the deep adventure of material birth. A ladder of delivering ascent and rungs that nature climbs to deity. That's the evolutionary process. And then he tells us that all these planes have been created as the result of the wide and prone leap of a Godhead's fall. The great world mother, by her sacrifice, has made her soul the body of our state. It's difficult for us to believe and to realize that this could be the soul of the mother herself. But he tells us our earth is a fragment and a residue. Her power is packed with the stuff of greater worlds. So all that is within us. So there in that first canto he tells us something about the real nature of our material world, about the mystery of it. Then the next canto, the kingdom of subtle matter. That's the next step above earth. This is also a world of forms, like our gross material world, but subtler and lovelier forms. And he says there, matter and soul can meet in conscious union. We always feel a division between our physical body and our diviner parts, but that is not necessary in the world of subtle matter. That realm contains the ideal templates of all forms and events here, and that realm provides the soul with the material of all its subtler bodies. We have subtle bodies that correspond to all the levels, and when our soul comes back into the material world, it puts on one by one all these subtle bodies, and it comes back finally into the physical body. He says of that world, out of its fall, out of its lowest levels, our denser matter came. Those lovelier forms can be a danger for those who enter there without sufficient purity and discrimination, because it cares only for beauty. It lends beauty to the terror of the gulfs and fascinating eyes to perilous gods, invests with grace the demon and the snake. So this world cannot retain Asvapati long. He moves on. He left that fine material paradise. His destiny lay beyond, in larger space. So the next level is the life worlds. They are of tremendous importance for us, and Asvapati's exploration of them covers 7 cantos of Book 2, cantos 3 to 9. More than half the lines of the whole of Book 2 are concerned with the life